Good morning.
This is going to be a morning full of energy, full of expressions, full of everything, okay? But before we do anything, let's go to the throne of grace. Let's bow our head. Eternal, almighty God, is once again that you've allowed us to enter into your presence. We come this morning, dear God, thank you for the beginning of a new day and a new era. We pray, God, that everything is done according to your divine will and way. Now, Lord, fill this place with your holiness. Let your will be done. Oh God, we thank you for the opportunity to come here now and to exchange thoughts and to reason together with each other. We pray, God, for the ones who are the speakers and the ones who have the questions, that they will come together as one. In the name of Christ Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, I've been asked to do this beautiful assignment to welcome everyone here and to open up these remarks. And you know, knowledge is power. And these type of forums are long overdue. As I was walking into the church today, I'm sure many of you saw there was a wedding that was taking place. And this is what's needed within the communities throughout, not only New York, but throughout the country. The time of common law living together, where people can do what they want, when they want, without commitment, those days are over with. We need to have unity within our community. And the only way that's going to happen is when we take vows to each other that we intend to uphold and to keep. And it is a marriage within the community between the law enforcement officers, the government agencies, and the community, because all of us are empowered. We are the people. We empower others. So it's our obligation to do this. And so we welcome you here this day that you can express your ideas and your concerns. There's no greater place to express it than at an open forum than on the street. The streets don't need any help. They can take care of themselves. We need to get help, and they need help. We need to come together unilaterally with the understanding who we are, whose we are, what we want, and what we don't want. These are, of course, I welcome you to the New Jerusalem Worship Center. I just want to say, whatever's on your mind, our pastor, Dr. Calvin Rice, welcomes you. The entire New Jerusalem Worship Center welcomes you. So whatever's on your heart, express it. God bless you, and now it's open to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Gregory Browne, and I am from the Justice Ministry. And with the Justice Ministry, we support families that experience incarceration, and that's our mission here at the Justice Ministry. But we thought it was important that we have this forum here because communities are in crisis. As you all know, nationally, there's a lot that's going on. There's a sense of anger, frustration, and not just at law enforcement, but because their lack of resources in our communities, their lack of mentors in our communities, there's lack of understanding, and we thought it's important that we have this forum so those issues can be talked about and addressed. And we have a distinguished panel here today that will talk about some of these issues so that we can hopefully minimize some of the crises that we experience in our community. And on the panel here, we have Lieutenant Clarence Hopkins from the 113th Precinct. We have Moira Meltzer-Cohen. She likes to be referred to as Mo. Okay.
Hey, Mo.
We have Bernard Warren. And we have Cedric Dew, and I will formally introduce them prior to them coming up to speak. We're going to have each presenter, each speaker come and present. We'll also leave time after their presentation for you to ask questions that you may have of them. Okay? I ask if you have any questions, there are 2 mics in each of the aisles here. Just step up to the mic and ask your questions. Okay? Our first speaker is, Lieutenant Clarence Hopkins. He's from the 103rd Precinct. And I'm going to have him just come up, and he's going to talk about what the precinct is doing to improve relations in our community. All right, so let's give a round of applause for
Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. My name is Lieutenant Clarence Hopkins of the 113th Precinct. I'm currently assigned to the 1st Platoon, which is like the midnight hours in 113th Precinct. I've been assigned there for about 3 years, but I also started my career as a cop back in 2002. So I have a lot of time in this community. I was a youth officer here. So I'm really familiar with a lot of things that go on here. And I somewhat grew up around here. You know, I had family, friends in the Ellis area, so I'm familiar with the vicinity of the 113 precinct a lot. I was asked to come here to talk about the resources that we have as a precinct to afford to the community. Thank you. It's numerous things that we actually have that the 113 precinct does for the community. We have the community council, which has its meeting every third Monday here or at the 113 precinct, where we give the community a chance to address whatever type of conditions or concerns they actually have with the precinct and how we are or not addressing them. We have the Youth Explorer program for kids 14 to 18, where we basically treat them as young mentors. They learn police procedures, police protocols, they wear uniforms, and they do community service and outreach with the community. We have the auxiliary program, which consists for the adults 18 and older who just want to donate time and help out with the precinct. They have community functions, parades, our National Night Out program, and other things where they just offer their resources and times to help out with the police department. We also have the National Night Out event with law enforcement, which is August 4th this year, where we basically give back to the community by having a gigantic barbecue at Roy Wilkins Park. It's all free food. They usually have brides. They usually have horses from the mountain unit. They have the aviation unit come out. They do things like that, just to show our appreciation back to the community. There's other resources that are outside of the 113 precinct. We have the whole Community Affairs Bureau, which have their own type of resources that they use that's separate from ours. Like they have the Cops and Kids programs that they have, the PAL, located on Godborough Boulevard and 116th Avenue. It's a Cops and Kids football program, Cops and Kids basketball program, Cops and Kids baseball program. They also have some type of summer youth program with summer employment and summer fun, where they have host trips and other options. So it's a lot of things that we do that probably go unnoticed or unheard, because I'm not sure how well they disseminated out to the community. So that's why I'm here today, just to tell you the options that we have to offer and to answer any questions anyone have concerning these things.
Anyone have any questions for Lieutenant Hopkins?
Sure.
I'm sure I'm loud enough that y'all can hear me. Just, you said it yourself, you don't know how the programs are disseminated to the community. Is there any way that, I mean, by your presence here, that we can start just having a direct pipeline where you start, reach out to churches and community groups and funnel that information so that they can bring it out to the community?
Yeah, we have a community affairs officer here now. And a lot of things are funneled out, like the National Night Out program is funneled out. We have flyers pretty much at every church and at, local stores, so we can have a nice public outreach coming to show up.
We also have an email address. You guys could email us, and we'll send you information in regards to the event that we're having. And it's Community Affairs 113@gmail.com. You guys could just email us your information, and we'll let you know everything that's going on in the precinct.
It's also important to know, a lot of programs I mentioned that the 113 precinct does is actually shared by every precinct in the city. Every precinct has an Explorer post, every precinct has an auxiliary post, and they all are pretty much active, dedicating their time and their resources to helping out. Any more questions? Sure.
I understand you have these programs. How well are they working?
The Explorer program works very well. Like today, they're actually at the VA hospital donating their time and services at the VA hospital. And the auxiliary program works very well. You get people who are from the community, who are familiar with the community, helping out at certain functions, out there. And they're a great resource from us to the community. Now, I would love to have a greater showing of kids involved and people involved so we could reach more people, but they definitely work well.
Is it really helping? Like the people, sorry to interrupt you, people my age, I'm 21.
Yeah.
So the auxiliary cops that are, 21, 25, are they really a role model to the people that's my age? Are people really looking up to them? Are more people joining the program because they see a better or?
Well, as an auxiliary officer, you learn the law to a certain level, and you learn certain police protocols. Now, how you use that discipline could be monumental. But to make a blanket statement on how well it works would be hard. You know, like how it affects one person might not affect another person. But like personally, like I said, I've been a part of it for a while. It works. I have kids reaching out to me from the Explorer program from years in the past, and that you see at different walks of life, and you get thank yous along the way. So it works well. Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Craig Sutherland.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a program that specifically addresses how the youth should interact with police when confronted?
Not that I know exactly that I can put words to. We do have a youth council that meets every Monday that addresses community and youth relations and youth on youth relations that arise. And I'm pretty sure that's disseminated to them. But in a greater scheme to more people who are not already involved in it, I can't think of one that I could tell you actively now. I would love to look into that and get back to you.
That would be helpful. I have two sons, and I believe they're law-abiding sons. And if they're ever approached or pulled over, I would want them to know, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, this, here's my idea, what should they do? And that's what I'm hoping, I was hoping to get that kind of information for them today when we're here.
Well, I could speak on that, but this would be one person perspective. Like what calms me might not calm everyone else in the room. So like at a car stop, I love to see someone roll down all the windows and to turn on a dome light, because that shows to me that they're no type of threat. And I can see in that car, especially working at night. And that right there releases my attention level, and it makes everything usually go so much smoother. So if that could be distributed to everyone, that would be great. Like I said, that what works for me. I can't speak for every cop and what calms them, but that's a great starting point at a car stop.
They don't drive.
They're 21, and hopefully soon.
Do police officers come together and try to have a program how they should react toward the citizens? Like to answer this question, do police officers come together and say, yo, this is what we need to do to help the people?
Well, it's
how often do you guys have meetings and stuff like that?
Well, it's a patrol guide in place that dictates a lot of our interaction and how we should handle things. But in that said, it's a guide. You know, if we can't base everything off a guide, because certain things fall in and out of that realm. But we do have trainings, and you know, we do have instances where they reinforce positive community interaction. Like currently, we have the Blue Carrots training that every cop is going to in the city, which is trying to fester positive community interactions and a baseline for getting back to community policing. So that is actually in place now. So that answers your question. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. There's always been a wall, so to say, between the community and the police. And in the black communities, even more so. And the questions that they brought up were very significant. The problems that we have is that the way we have been treated for many, many years. Everyone has been approached as a criminal. I'm a minister. I had a clergy sign in my car. I was stopped, car was searched. I mean, I could go through a whole lot of things where there doesn't seem to be the enforcement by the commanding officers at the precinct or precincts to enforce the type of way they approach people. When you approach everyone as a criminal, it creates a problem. All of us are not criminals, just like we don't have all bad police. I went through the civilian patrol academy, okay? And I understand what you're dealing with. But understand that's what we're dealing with. We have two opposite situations. Most of the police officers don't know anything about us. They don't know what we think, what we say, or what we do. The news publicizes us as animals. We're not animals, we're human beings. We want to respect the police because basically most people are God-fearing, police-fearing people. But when you have an officer, like me, recently I was just telling someone else, I walked up to an officer and said, "Good morning." And everybody said they're friendly. And he looked at me, he was buying coffee. And he looked, I said, "How you doing?" I said, My name is Reverend Erskine. I'm with clergy liaison, whatever went on with this. And he looked, yeah, and got his coffee and walked out. That to me was a negative. And I understand that people come into the academy and they go through the thing and they go out here into the streets. But when they're in the streets, they can't be castigating us because of what they feel, what they heard. It's a tough situation. I understand their lives on the line. We respect what they do. God knows when you're in trouble, you want to see a police officer. But at the same time, you don't want to feel intimidated by them. There has to be some way where the community and the police can come together, and now all this, we have all these programs, all that sounds great. But the truth being told, let's deal with some realities. How do we tear down this wall of communication that's blocking us from talking to each other? How do we communicate at a point where it doesn't seem hostile or whatever it may be? These are the constructive things we need to do. These are the things that we as a community want from the police, and we expect the police want it from us. What's wrong with a police officer going by saying, good morning? And what's wrong with us saying, good afternoon? There's a problem. And it's a deep embedded problem. And I believe it started from the top and worked its way down. But it's my personal opinion, it starts from the patrol officer on the street, his attitude towards us. I don't care who's sitting back at the headquarters, he's the guy out there in the street. He needs us, we need him. How do we make things better?
Well, it's important to build a trust between both layers. Like, you know, we need y'all as much as we need you. You need us. Like, we here as a community, and that's tops. Like, we work best when we work well together. That's not lost on me ever. But with that said, like, what's in someone's heart, I can't speak for other people.
Exactly.
Like, I can't tell another person how to be morally good or say good morning when they walk in a room.
Right.
Everyone's built differently. And no matter how much you enforce on certain people to be like that, like, that's something that has to be inbred at home, to start it young, and just be taught to the youth. You know, and it's be something that we can ask cops to do better, and that's what Blue Carrot's training was about. But to answer that question, that's a bridge that has to go both ways. No, like, I'm not making excuses for any cops in the streets, but you never know the burden of what they just dealt with the day before, the job they handled the day before, what could be going through their mind the moment before. Because we see a lot, and that doesn't make it right. But it's hard to turn that shit off and on at times. Like, I'm not everyone else. I carry it differently than other people. But all we could do is force you say good morning to the next cop, and hopefully it keeps on carrying forward.
And you guys have to remember, we are all trained to be respectful to each other and to the community. It's how the cops take that training and use it in the community. We are all individual and use it individual. It's nice to say good morning. We say good morning all the time. Even if you don't speak back to us, we say good morning and we keep it going. But we are trained to be respectful.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Frank Mason. I'm from the Coney Island area.
Thank
Pastor
you.
of Coney Island. I was listening to what the young man spoke about and what Reverend Erskine spoke about in terms of the relationship with the police officers in our community and being able to have some sort of a mutual relationship with both parties. Years ago, we used to do what you call a sensitivity training. The sensitivity training was dealing with how we should approach the police and how the police should approach us. How they would know the ways in which our community is ran, how to deal with each other, and what they should say and what they should not say. And it was a nice forum, and we had it going for a nice little while. But what they did was they would try to catch the police officers when they come out of the academy and get them before they get to the street. Now my problem was that they were so hyped up when they came out of the academy, because now they know that they're going into the street, and it was like as if they was already told that they was going into a war zone. So we're standing there speaking to them, and all they're thinking about, we're getting ready to reach the street next week. So now you're talking to them, but a lot of them had already been programmed. So therefore, when they came outside, turned out, she was driving a black car, unmarked. So while she was driving in, I was coming out, pulled right in front of my house,
and right in front of my house is a mailbox. So I stopped my car to go get my mail, and I was gonna keep on going. She pulled in front of me after going behind me, coming into the dead end, came back outside, pulled in front of me while I was at my mailbox, stopped, started writing a ticket for my car. My car is parked directly in front of my house. My address is on the ticket. So I said, you know, officer, why are you giving me a ticket? She said, well, you double parked. I said, officer, I live here. I said, don't you see my clergy sign is in the window? You know, she just looked at the clergy sign and just started writing the ticket. You know, and I tried to talk to her, and then she said, well, I'm already started writing the ticket and everything. I said, well, officer, I live right here. So I started walking to put my mail in the house now. And then she said, well, you should listen to what I'm trying to say to you. I said, officer, you're already writing me up the ticket. In other words, I don't want to take all your time, but she wrote me a ticket. And the ticket has my address in front of it. This is my house. I didn't come out of there looking like I was a thug or anything else like that. I just came out of my house. And she wrote me up the ticket. And she knows she was wrong because I told her, you know, like I said, I'm from this community. Everybody knows me in this community. I said, officer, I live here. My ticket has my exact address of my house. How do you get a ticket for being parked in front of your own house? And that's what she did. That's what she did. And I'm not saying all officers are like that, officer. I'm not saying that. We have officers that I have great respect for. But years ago, police officers used to talk to the community, and the community would talk to them. Because we really need each other. It's not like as if they just, you know, we need them to, but we still have to have some kind of communication. But when you put a wall up and you look at everybody the same way, you get citizens that's here. Everybody out there is not, every young fella is not a drug dealer and out there in the street doing something wrong. And so that's what we need with sensitivity training. I think every precinct, it should be mandatory that they have sensitivity training, and that should go out to them before they become so hyped up.
Well, that's what we're here for, to create a dialogue with that, so we can make points of emphasis like that. You know, and I don't know where we could start that at, but I'll definitely look into that. You know, are you still a resident of Coney Island, or are you back in the 113 precinct?
No, I live in Coney Island.
You live in Coney Island.
Hello, I'm Jarrell Johnson. I just had a question of what are the police doing to police themselves about the officers because it's okay to put their hands on people?
Well, we have
I have a personal experience. 2 weeks ago, me and my best friend, it was Saturday night, very young, we went to go get a little something to drink for the night. The bottle wasn't even open, it was still in the bag, we were walking through the park. Police officers pull up, take the bottle, open the bottle, pour it out, arrest my friend for an open bottle. Now I'm standing there, I'm bugging out because I'm a little bit confused as to what's going on. Let me go back a little bit. The two officers that pulled up were detectives, unmarked vehicle. Did not announce themselves, just hopped out of the car and just kind of ran on us. So, in the middle of them roughing up my friend, I called cops. I'm like, there were two random people trying to kidnap my brother right now. I need help. Officer slaps the phone out of my hand, puts me up on the wall, roughs me up a little bit. They take my brother, well, he's not a brother, he's my best friend, that's like my brother. Put him in the car, take him off. I saw him like 2 days later. 2 days later, he goes, you know, they took me to jail, they didn't put me in the system or anything. They just held him for a couple of hours, I guess, till the smoke settled, and they let him go. Now, unfortunately, as the system goes, we didn't get no name, no nothing. Literally just two random officers just ran up on us. Now, from a citizen's point of view, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do. Now, I like to know, what do police officers do about themselves in that type of situation? Do you guys have a unit that gives you some therapy or something? Like, what happens with that?
CCRB.
Well, we have units that monitor police. We have the Internal Affairs Bureau, we have the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and they actually just formed a new organization to monitor, their monitor of the police department. If you called 911 in regards to those cops doing something that you felt was wrong at that time, It should have been a separate 911 call made directly to IB. It should have been a call out right there at that moment. And that's like a check and balance system that's in place when somebody makes an allegation of a cop wrongdoing in the street at the scene of an event. It's usually a request for a supervisor, and it's usually a call out to IB that directly follows that. I don't know what happened there. I'm not going to speak on the actual incident itself. I'll just tell you, like, it is monitors in place to police what we do. You know, we are scrutinized very hardly for some of the things that are alleged against us. And when you make an allegation with a cop, it stays with a cop for a while. It's not washed away.
Same thing on citizens. It's
Yeah.
the same way.
You know, the system should work fairly both ways, 100%.
Okay, I was also gonna ask, like,
Just one thing. There's actually somebody, you're from the fence.
Yeah.
And she could maybe answer some of the questions you have
I will be.
about.
That are in place in situations like that. I feel like that's a problem, just creating more bureaucracies to just hand the baton on, and the situations are not being handled. I feel like these organizations are being created just for something to just put something to just put out for the press. It's not really to do anything.
100%. It's not for pacification.
Because for citizens, I mean, to be honest, I understand police feel like they're judged shrewdly, but to be honest with you, as a taxpayer citizen, you work for me, I don't work for you. So if you feel scrutinized, that's not my problem.
All right. Like I was saying, it's not for pacification. When allegations are made against cops and they're investigated and they're found guilty, there are harsh penalties. They lose vacation days, they lose monetary pay. You know, sometimes they get modified, suspended from their assignments. There are harsh penalties that go with this stuff when it's found guilty. So it's not done for pacification at all.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Hopkins? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
She likes to be referred to as Mo. Okay. She's a criminal defense attorney committed to supporting people's struggles for liberation. She's a founding member of Just Info, a 24-hour helpline providing legal information, service, referrals, and opportunities for the community-based organizations against aggressive policing and mass incarceration. She also is a member of Mutant Legal, a collective devoted to popular legal education for groups and individuals targeted by law enforcement on the basis of perceived identity rather than conduct. Mo also teaches criminal law in the undergraduate political science department at Hunter College. Mo will be talking to us about knowing what our rights are and what to do when we're confronted in these situations by law enforcement. Let's give a round of applause to Mo.
Hi. So I'm with Just Info. We're here today with Mr. Eric Waters, who's our project manager. We have a banner and some flyers, some business cards over there. I'm going to talk to you real briefly about what we do, and then I'm going to do a Know Your Rights training, okay? So some of these questions that I've been hearing asked to the officer here, I can go some way toward answering. So Just Info was founded a couple of years ago. We're a 24-hour hotline. The number is 1-855-878-4630. So it's 185 Just Info, but the O at the end of info is a 0. Okay? We formed actually kind of out of, y'all remember Occupy Wall Street? Okay, so during Occupy Wall Street, there was a hotline that was set up for the protesters to call. And it was set up so that the National Lawyers Guild could track people who were being arrested during these mass arrests through the system and make sure that no one got lost, make sure that everyone had a lawyer, and provide them sort of support from the point of their arrest to the disposition of their case. So people were calling in to report arrests, and that was sort of the main idea of the hotline. But what would happen is there would be a lot of arrests, and people's friends would call in and say, my friend got arrested, do you know where they are? And we would answer some of these questions. And then people would be released and they would have tickets. And 2 weeks later, the people who had been arrested would start calling. And they would say, I lost my ticket. Where do I go? I'm not going to be in town the day I'm supposed to go back to court. What do I do? I think I have a warrant. What do I do? I can't find my attorney. And we thought, man, these are really serious questions. They're simple questions. They're not legal advice questions, right? They're about legal information. But if you couldn't find the answer to that question, there could be really serious consequences. And so then we started being in court and seeing these mostly white, mostly college-educated young people who are the vast minority of people who are in the criminal courts, right? And their legal and social outcomes, because they had access to this hotline and access to these answers to fairly simple questions that they otherwise wouldn't have had, because they had access to that information, their outcomes, legally and socially, were really, really good. We were having a lot of dismissals, a lot of ACDs. We were really seeing positive or more positive or less negative outcomes, dispositions, and what we would call collateral consequences of conviction, right? The loss of certain privileges as a result of a criminal conviction, just on the basis of these kids having access to that information. And we thought, well, what is the rest of the city doing? The rest of the city who's trying desperately not to get arrested, who's being targeted by the police, right? Who's having a lot more involuntary encounters with the NYPD. What are they doing if they miss a court date? What are they doing if they don't know who their lawyer is or they can't find their attorney? And so we looked into it, and the fact was there was nothing there. There was no hotline for them to call. There was no single source of information. So we made one. And that's what Just Info is. So if you call Just Info and you say, my child has been arrested at this intersection, what precinct are they at? How do I post bail? How do I put money on someone's books at Rikers? I have 3 different summonses and I don't know which, where I'm supposed to be going for each of them. We can help you figure that kind of thing out and make sure that you're not missing court dates and getting bench warrants. Make sure that you can find your kid in the system. We can talk to you about what your constitutional rights are. I wish the police hadn't left. I think I would really like them to hear this presentation. So in any case, what we do is we provide a very simple intervention, which is providing information in hopes of mitigating, reducing, or eliminating the harm that comes from having encounters with law enforcement. We also give service referrals because one of the things, not always, but one of the things that can be a determinant of interaction with law enforcement is the way that law enforcement perceives your identity, right? We all know that you don't have to commit a crime in order to get arrested. You don't have to commit a crime in order to be convicted, and you certainly don't have to commit a crime in order to be targeted for law enforcement attention, right? This is a reality. There are incentives in place for police to do things like stop, question, and frisk after a great deal of very intense litigation. The courts in the Southern District of New York said, yeah, there really isn't supposed to be a conflict between your constitutional rights and what the police are doing. The police are supposed to conform their conduct to the United States Constitution. And here's, what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. We know that the reality of the situation is different, right? That there is often a conflict between the Constitution and the way that police are engaging in their jobs, and that what they are often policing is identity, right? Where you live, what you look like, how you're dressed, as opposed to criminal conduct. So we do various kinds of service referrals, to deal with some of the issues that surround that perceived identity, right? So we can put you in touch with organizations that are community-based organizations that do empowerment work with whatever identity groups you belong to. We also have service referrals for housing issues, because one of the things we see is that a lot of landlord-tenant issues that really should be in housing court end up in criminal court. We have service referrals for mental health care, for physical health care, and and also for substance abuse issues, right? Because that can be another really big determinant of interaction with the police. And also we have service referrals for homelessness issues, because homeless people and homelessness is another identity that can really, you know, I don't want to say draw the attention of the police, because that's sort of some victim blaming, but that's another source of unwanted interactions and unnecessary interactions with the police. So that's what Just Info does. We're 24 hours. We do not give legal advice. We give legal information. So the difference between legal advice and legal information is that if you asked me about the very specific facts of a case that you were involved in and said, what should I do? That would be legal advice, right? Legal information is to ask a question that the answer is going to be the same for everyone, right? The Constitution says the following. This is how you get to 100 Center Street. Here's how you look up your next return date online. That's legal information. So that's the primary service that we offer apart from the referrals. And the final thing that we can do is help you get in touch with these accountability mechanisms that you were asking about. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jarrell. Jarrell, some of these accountability systems that you were asking about, we can help you find civil rights attorneys, right? And we can help you navigate the CCRB, which, you know, it doesn't have the kind of teeth that we would necessarily want it to as an enforcement mechanism, but it is real. And it can be actually really important if you have an experience like the one you described. You know, first of all, the police are always supposed to be marked, so even if they're plainclothes, they should have a badge, and you have a right to ask them for their shield number. Yes?
That was also a part that I asked his name.
And he didn't give it.
That turned into back and forth verbal exchange.
Right.
Then led to us getting to a
Right. So there are a bunch of ways in which police misconduct can actually serve to further conceal police misconduct and prevent accountability, right? And I can talk to you a little bit about some of those. But so, you know, we're just a resource if you have a question, if you have an issue. We do answer calls anonymously, so, you know, we don't ask for your name. We collect a very small amount of data just so that we can try to track trends geographically. So if we see, you know, that every Saturday night people in the 50th precinct are calling about the same thing, then we can see, okay, something's going on there. But we don't track any identifying information about you. And we also would encourage you not to give us any identifying information on the phone. But we are a resource in that way, and if you have any questions, I would encourage you to call. We have a whole bunch of business card-sized flyers over there on that table. And please take as many as you want. Give them to your kids. Give them to your friends. I think that it's a useful thing to have on you. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about what your rights are and just do a sort of basic know your rights training, okay? As I said, it really is important to remember that there isn't supposed to be a conflict between the rights that I'm going to talk to you about and what the police are doing. The police are not supposed to get angry at you invoking your constitutional rights. They have sworn to uphold the Constitution. That said, there is nothing, there are no magic words that I can give you or your kids that will prevent your rights from being violated. And there are no magic words that I can give you that will keep you actually safe. So I'm going to talk to you about what your rights are and how to invoke them and why you should invoke them. But you always have to make that decision for yourself in the moment and do what feels safest to you. It's truly, I can tell you what the Constitution says, but in the moment of an encounter with law enforcement, the Constitution is not the thing that carries a gun, right? And I'm really, really sorry that I can't stand here and give you magic words. But this is what I got, okay? So, you have several rights, and there are some really specific ways of invoking those rights, okay? So a police officer has a right to walk up to you on the street and talk to you in the same way that I have a right to walk up to any stranger on the street and say, hi, what's your name? Where are you going? Now, if I walked up to any stranger on the street and said, hi, what's your name? Where are you going? They might be a little concerned, and they would probably ignore me. I would not necessarily recommend ignoring a police officer, but the fact is they have no more right to a response than I would, right? They have a right to ask you. They have what is called the common law right of inquiry. If an officer comes up and asks you a question, you can answer with another question. And I want you all to repeat this with me, okay? The question you ask is, am I free to go? Okay, say it with me. Am I free to go? Again, am I free to go? If they say yes, you bounce. If they say no, the next question is, am I being detained? So, am I being detained?
Am I being detained?
The reason you have to ask is because if you are being detained, it's important to know that. It's important to know that you're being detained because if you're being detained, the police have a couple of rights that they wouldn't have otherwise. It also means that they have to have a reason, okay? They have to have articulable, reasonable suspicion to detain you. That means that it needs to be a real reason. It can't be inarticulable, or as Justice Thurgood Marshall referred to, sort of pretend reasons or unlawful reasons, right? Like I'm detaining you because you're a black man between the ages of 14 and 21, would not be an inarticulable reason, it would be an unspeakable reason. So if you say, am I being detained? And they say no, what do? You bounce. You bounce. And if they say yes, then you can say why, right? They may or may not give you a reason. They may give you a reason that's clearly untrue. But you need to remember, at this point, you need to be very, very alert. And you need, if you can, if they are marked, remember their name and their badge number, right? And remember what they say when you ask why. If you are being detained, they have some rights. They have a right to do a couple of things. One thing is they can ask you if they can search you. To which we say loudly so that whoever is standing nearby taping it with their cell phone can pick it up, I do not consent to this search. Okay, say this with me. I do not consent to this search. It's really important that you say, I do not consent to this search, because if you don't say anything, you have consented. Okay? Like over 90% of searches are consensual because the person who is the subject of the search doesn't say anything. Okay? Cops cannot go into your pockets. They can ask you to empty your pockets, but you are under no obligation at that point to do so. Okay? And it's really, really important for you to invoke that right, even if you don't have anything on you, right? It's because it is your constitutional right. You have a right to privacy, right? We close the door to our bathroom. We have curtains on our windows and locks on our doors. And nobody thinks that that is strange. Nobody would get angry with us for demanding those rights to privacy. And in the same way, the contents of your pocketbook and your pockets can also be private. The other thing the cops have a right to do if they feel threatened, if they reasonably feel threatened, is to frisk you, which means that they can pat you down over your clothes to check for weapons. They can't pat you down over your clothes to check for something that is not a weapon, right? They can't ask you to strip, right? They can pat you down over your clothes to check for weapons if they have a reasonable fear for their safety. Who defines reasonable? They do, right. So You should just be aware that that is a right that they have. And those are the limits of that right. They can't unzip you. They can't, remove layers of clothing. They can pat you down to make sure you don't have a gun. The third thing they can do at that point is to ask you for your identification. If you are a citizen of the United States, you have no affirmative obligation to carry identification with you or to show it to the police. However, it can make your life much harder if you don't. The reality of this situation is that if they're asking you for your ID on the street, it is very likely because they want to issue you a summons, which they can do on the street. They can write you a ticket and hand it to you and off you go. If you don't show them your ID at that point, they can arrest you and take you to a precinct until they verify your identity, which is just a much more difficult and frustrating process. So if you are on the street and you are being detained, they can ask for your ID, and it is probably going to be easier for you to give it to them, but you don't have to. Okay? It's not an independent offense. They can't charge you. It's not a crime to refuse to show an officer ID. That said, they very well may just, if you even question it, if you take too long to show the ID. I've had clients who just get dragged off. And in fact, I was dragged off to a precinct once for asking an officer why he wanted to see my ID. So that's a thing that is real and happens. So if you actually are at a point where the officer has detained you and it's clear that you're going to be arrested, there's a couple of things that you need to do, or that I would highly recommend that you do. One thing that I would recommend that you do is say out loud, I am not resisting. Okay, so let's practice this. I am not resisting. This can be important because sometimes what happens is that people get a resisting charge whether or not they were resisting. And so it can be very helpful if you're narrating to the officer. It can be psychologically very helpful for them to hear that you're not resisting. It can also be very valuable later in court if you have video of you saying that you're not resisting. The next thing that happens is the second you are cuffed, there is one and only one thing that you need to say to a police officer, and this is so important. All of the other rights that I've talked to you about, all of the other magic words I've given you that help you invoke your rights are only useful later, right? They're useful if you say, I do not consent to this search, right? And the officer goes into your pockets and finds something. That would be evidence that was unlawfully obtained. It would be evidence that was obtained in violation of the Constitution. And that evidence then could be suppressed later at trial. That's a right that you invoke so that you have a benefit later. But the one right that you can really invoke that has meaning in the moment is your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Okay? This is the most important thing that I can tell anyone ever. Okay? So you say, I am going to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer. Okay? Let's practice this 3 times. I am going to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer. I am going to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer. I am going to remain silent and I want to speak to a lawyer. I understand that it is hard to say this to somebody who is in a blue uniform. It may be hard to say anything, but you have to invoke that right. You have to say it in that specific way, or it doesn't count. Once you have invoked that right, you have to actually remain silent. Because the way you waive your right to remaining silent is by talking. So you can talk. You can say, I need to go to the hospital, or I need to use the bathroom. You can sing, but do not even engage in small talk with the police if you are in custody, right? Don't tell them what you had for breakfast. Don't tell them what baseball team you like. You know on TV how everyone gets Mirandized? They say, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. There's a truth there and a lie there. The lie is that every time you're arrested, you're Mirandized. You aren't. And they have no responsibility to read you your Miranda rights unless and until they take you into a room to do what's called a custodial interrogation. You are very unlikely to be Mirandized if you're arrested. That's what I'm doing right now. I am Mirandizing you. I am letting you know what your rights are. But the truth that is in those TV shows is that anything you say can and very much will be used against you, okay? You cannot talk your way out of an arrest. But even if you are innocent, you can talk your way into a conviction. All right? It's very, very important to remember that, and it's very important for especially young people, I think, to understand that, because they really believe that their factual innocence will protect them. And it won't. All right? Another way that I say this sometimes is even a fish wouldn't get caught if he kept his mouth shut. Please remember that these rights are not just for innocent people, and they're not just for guilty people. They're for everyone, right? It is really important to remember that you don't have to have committed a crime in order to end up with a conviction. There's huge numbers of people who end up pleading guilty to things they didn't do because the consequences of not pleading guilty seem so daunting. All right? One big, big thing you can do to help yourself is to invoke your right to silence and actually remain silent. If you end up in a jail cell and you really need medical attention, sometimes the police will tell you it's going to take longer. Go get medical attention. Just go get medical attention. If you need medical care, ask them to take you to the hospital. Because one of the things that, as a criminal defense attorney, I have seen more times than I care to remember is somebody picking up a felony assault on an officer charge. And usually what that means is that the person viciously attacked the officer's nightstick with their face. And the felony assault charge is sort of used to retroactively justify that violence. So being able to go in, first of all, you need medical care. Just, apart from any legal ramifications, if you need medical care and you are in holding, don't let them talk you out of it. Get medical care. And second of all, it's a very good way to document that you, started out your day without a black eye and a broken nose and ended your day with a black eye and a broken nose. So that can be helpful both for your criminal case and if you want to have one or have the fact pattern for one, a civil suit. The last thing I want to talk to you about is filming. Okay? Actually, first I want to practice this again. Okay? I am going to remain silent. And I want to speak to a lawyer. This is your mantra, okay? You've got to remember this. You say that you're going to remain silent, and then you remain silent, all right? If you need something, you can talk, but then you re-invoke your right to silence, okay? Please do remember that the police are trained to make inquisitive small talk, and they really, really will use anything you say against you. They're paid to make arrests and build cases. They are not paid to make small talk with you about baseball, right? So I'm not trying to say that every person who is an officer of the law is 100% of the time out to get you, but you really need to remember who they work for and what their goals are. Because once you are in holding, if you're on the street and you want to say good morning to an officer, there's not a lot of danger there. If you are in holding and an officer is quizzing you about your family life, I would be very circumspect about sharing any of those details. Okay? So the last thing I want to talk to you about is filming the police. You have a right to film the police. At this point, it is looking more and more like it will end up being a constitutional right to film the police. You have a right to film the police within a reasonable distance. Who defines reasonable? Yeah. So I'm going to recommend what I call the mama bear rule. Excuse me. Don't get in between an officer and the person that they are trying to arrest. That makes sense, right? And if they ask you to move back and say, I am moving back. Because it's psychologically helpful for them to hear that you're doing the thing they told you to do. You say, I am moving back, officer, and you move back as little as possible. Okay? It can be really important to film the police. It doesn't always work, right? We all saw the Eric Garner video. It doesn't always do what we are hopeful that it will do. I don't think there is any way that I can, convey to you the power to hold the police accountable in more meaningful ways. But it is really important for them to understand that the communities in which they're operating have their eye out and are aware that they have rights, that they have a right to document police conduct and misconduct. Okay? Now, the fact that you have a right to film the police does not mean you're not going to get arrested for it. Okay? There are teams of people called Cop Watch who go around and they do what it sounds like they do. They watch and film police. It can be a little safer to do cop watching in a group. But if you observe a police interaction that you want to film, as I said before, always do what feels safe to you. But it can be really, really important and really helpful for you to film those kinds of interactions and to figure out how to contact the person who was the subject of those interactions. Be very careful about posting video on the internet, though. Sometimes that can really backfire. I would definitely try to get in touch with an attorney. You could call Just Info, and we could put you in touch with an attorney to review that video and see if it's something that would be good to put out there, or if it's something that should really just go to the defense attorney or to the person who was being arrested or hassled. If you do get arrested filming the police, that is not a good arrest. Okay, it's not a lawful arrest. That's not a basis for the police to arrest you. But as long as you sort of stay back and don't get in the middle of the officer and the person they're trying to arrest, even if they threaten to charge you with obstructing government administration, right, is the words that they'll use. Filming the police is not actually a basis for that charge. So, you have to make decisions about what feels safe to you, but filming the police is a right that you have, and it can be really important, both for holding police accountable, just so that they as individuals and as an institution understand that they're being watched and monitored, and also for the people who are being harmed by police misconduct. It can be really, if nothing else, it can be really validating, but it can also be really helpful legally and socially. And in the event that there is really egregious misconduct, it can be really helpful to document that for purposes of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, for purposes of the Internal Affairs Department, and also for people's civil suits, right, when they sue the police for harm that the police have done to them. And that is, the more that we're able to document that, the more accountable we can actually hold the police. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Not a question, it's more of a statement. As I get older, it gets harder and harder for me to respect the police and take them serious. Especially how they just walked out of the workshop. They might have other things to do and jobs, but this is what they got called to do today. They should have stayed. That's number one.
I do wish they had stayed. I am a little disappointed that they didn't stay.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, I will stay. Well, can I respond? I think it can be really difficult. One of the things that I talked to my college students about was the sort of crisis of legitimacy in the institution of policing, right? That it's very difficult to take seriously this institution when, for example, the institution of policing is actually very recent. It's only a few hundred years old. And policing in the United States was developed to protect property at a time when black people were property. So it's very difficult for people to take seriously the institution as a whole, and particularly recently, as police violence escalates and as the media attention to police violence escalates, it's, I think, becoming more and more difficult for people to have respect for law enforcement. I don't think anyone needs to have respect for any individual or any institution, right? That respect has to be earned. But I would definitely remind everyone that police, whether or not you respect them, have an enormous amount of power. And so I would say it's important to have a healthy amount of caution when dealing with them. So I'm not going to recommend that you have respect or that you learn to respect something that you don't feel inclined to respect, but I would recommend that you be very thoughtful and careful in terms of any encounters with law enforcement that you do have. They have power not only in terms of their weapons, but they also have power over the rest of your life, right? Because if you are arrested and charged, there can be really serious consequences, and that's actually, what Just Info is hoping to do, is to mitigate or reduce those kinds of long-term devastating consequences. Because what we see with mass incarceration, with aggressive policing, with the school-to-prison pipeline, is this funneling of huge sections of the community in really predictable ways out of the community and into prisons, and then even if they get out of prison, into situations that ultimately may lead back to prison, but ultimately do keep them out of the community in permanent or semi-permanent ways. So our hope is that by doing workshops like this one, we can ultimately prevent or at least really reduce the kind of harm that is coming to communities that are targeted by police on the basis of their identity and not the basis of their conduct.
Any other questions for Mo? Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say it's such an honor and a pleasure to be here, and thank you for letting me come today.
Thanks this
morning, and we're actually going to right now. A few years ago, Kevin Miller was shot by a stray bullet his first day at campus Magnet High School, and they're dedicating the street name for him supposedly at 12 o'clock today. So I'm going to head over there. We had the St. Albans Memorial Day Parade this morning. I was at PS 147 this morning. I just left the occasions, and I was over on Northern Boulevard at 9 o'clock this morning. So I'm trying to remember where I'm supposed to be next. But I just say all of that to say that there are a lot of things that have to happen in the community so that the community can be informed. It only takes the work of people that are willing to spend the time like you are here this morning to make sure that the message gets out. And I would encourage more interaction with the police department. I don't know why the officer left, but maybe he had other things he had to do today. So the next time we have to make sure that you get to do some Q&A. I would also recommend that you work to take some young people to the precinct on the muster days when they're getting ready to. They always have speakers just before they muster in for a shift or muster out for a shift as well, so that the young people can have a chance to talk to police officers as well. Now, Brother Drew does a lot of things with young people at the Jamaica Y. Getting them to the YMCA is another good way for kids to have an outlet so that they can burn off that energy and not be as aggravated with going to school, but not being well educated. So it's important that they have a creative outlet. And I want to thank Brother Warren for letting me know about today's program and everything again that you're doing here in New Jerusalem to provide opportunities for people to learn. So with that, I want to thank you and then tell you that also, if you ever have an encounter with the police, the first thing you should do is call somebody that you trust to let them know where you are. You know, and before, if you can get a chance to use the phone, make sure you use that phone and let somebody know that you're in trouble. But I would advise that the first thing you do when you have an encounter with the police is to be as quiet and as inward as possible. Try to lower your emotions, lower your reaction, and just try to be as quiet as possible. To come within yourself, try to find some peace and stillness so that you don't rise to the level of any aggravated or animated conversation with a police officer. The thing that you want to do is to show a calm face, a positive face, and a face that will encourage a police officer to go do something else and leave you alone. So, with that, and I get that from, I'm honored that former Detective Al Stevens is now working with my office. So if you ever want to go more in depth about police and the culture, you know, we'd be happy to come back and speak to you at another time. With that, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, in our communities, we get in a lot of trouble with law enforcement because we don't have programs for our young people to go to. And our next speaker is going to talk about programs that the Jamaica Y offers. And I was really surprised at the various number of programs that the Y offers to our young people. And Cedric Dew, who is the executive director of the Y, is going to come up and talk about it. But let me give you a little background on Cedric. He serves as the executive director of the Jamaica Y. He supervised day-to-day operations of the Jamaica Y since 2004, after serving as branch associate executive director since 2001. His extensive career spans more than 2 decades in public service, stemming from a deep passion for youth development through sports. And I can attest to that. Cedric and I worked many years ago together back in the rugby tournament and was the ESC organization. Prior to the YMCA, Cedric served in a variety of positions in the Madison Square Garden Boys and Girls Club, following positions as program director for ELMCOR Youth and Adults Activities and sports coordinator for the National Pro-Am City Leagues. Cedric was twice named Black Man of Distinction for his work with youth in East Flatbush by then State Senator and now Brooklyn Borough President Marty Markowitz. In 2013, he was also named Man of Distinction by Councilman Leroy Comrie for his outstanding work in the Jamaica community. And in 2014, received the Beacon of Light Award from Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, Inc. and the Seven Roses Legacy Foundation. Okay. Under Cedric's leadership, the Jamaica Y started or expanded several programs, including Y After School Academy, Y Leadership Club, Y Global Teams, Y Road Centers, which he'll talk about these programs in a bit. And Cedric has been and continues to be an advocate for the struggles of both youth and adults in the Southeast Queens community. Through partnerships built on integrity and a win-win approach, Cedric has led the Jamaica Y to the forefront of the community development strategy. Let's give a round of applause for our next speaker.
I feel honored that Greg read my bio. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'll say this. I sat and I listened to the first 2 esteemed speakers, and it triggered all kinds of thoughts in me. So I'll start out by saying something that I think is important to sort of set the foundation for both my past and my current. I'm a citywide. I call myself a citywide mutt. I've lived in the South Bronx. I've worked every 10 blocks of Harlem. I spent 18 years in Brooklyn, and now I've been in Jamaica for about 13 years. So I know our communities. And I say that to just lay the foundation for what we're all dealing with. On the other side, how many saw Fruitvale Station, the movie? Okay, that was my cousin, Oscar Grant. So that was a first-hand experience for me of what it means when interaction between police and not just some person you see on the news, but a family member goes wrong. And I say that because I wanted to lay that as the foundation to a two-sided conversation. You know, Greg asked me to talk about the Y and its programs, but I want to cross-connect Y programs to our experiences on a day-to-day basis and explain to you why. The YMCA is an organization that started in communities as a alternative to some of the same issues that we're dealing with today. I mean, you go back to the founding days of the YMCA, it was really about men who got on ships, who would travel and be on boats for 3-6 months and come back and they'd hit the shorelines, and all of the social skills, because you know, when you bottle people up and then they go back to the shoreline, they lose their mind. And so some genius decided, well, you know what, we need to give these individuals something to do so that when they come back off of these boats, we can bring them down. We can bring them down. Actually, that's how basketball got invented. That's how volleyball got invented, and that's how baseball got invented. You know, I always tell people that if we weren't playing sports, we'd be out hunting each other. It's a reality of the DNA. So the YMCA is an organization that focuses on giving not just young people, but families someplace to go, something to do together as well as apart. One of the great myths about our YMCA is that we're just in that building. We're actually not just in the YMCA facility on Parsons Boulevard. We're in 5 locations in the surrounding areas. So we've learned that you can't just be in a building and expect everyone to come to you. You have to go out to the community. I'll talk about a program I think probably is the most important program that we just started, which is called our Y Road Center. You know, in our communities, we have 2 types of young people, I believe. And I sit in all the meetings with Greater Jamaica Development Corporation. Businesses are always talking about trying to come to downtown. And they see 8,000 kids travel down Parsons Boulevard every day. And most of the businessmen say, what you gonna do with all these kids? Like, this is the one thing that scares business folks from starting new businesses in downtown Jamaica. I sit in the meetings, I hear it all the time. And I say to them, I said, what's the problem? They're young people. They're here. They're your biggest consumer. They're gonna buy more from you. Why do you think every fast food restaurant opens up in downtown Jamaica? Because our kids are gonna frequent the McDonald's and all those places. Their argument is, but they can be unruly. And I disagree. If 8,000 kids travel down Parsons Boulevard, you might have 1 incident. Think about that. 8,000 kids, you might have 1 incident. Now, I say that to say that so many of those kids are just traveling going home. A lot of those kids are just traveling to go to the next thing that they got to go to. So we have to make sure that as a community that we're educating both the business sector and the police sector as to what our kids' purpose is. The councilman and I go back a ways, well, he's not a senator, but we go back to actually videotaping weddings. He was a photographer and I was a videographer. And one of the reasons he and I would go out and shoot jobs is because in our communities, when they would send the white photographers, they didn't get us. They don't understand our humor. They don't understand when we're just kind of goofing around. They don't understand our seriousness. And I use that analogy to say that that's what the police are up against, most of them when they come into our communities. They don't know what we look like. They don't understand when the difference between a homeless person and someone who's in transit of life. People who suffered Katrina are in the transit of life. They didn't ask to be homeless for that period that they were homeless. They look no different than someone who's sitting outside who just had a hard day's work. And I say that to say that some of the solutions start with a YMCA. It starts with your local church. It starts with Boys and Girls Clubs. It starts with organizations and people like yourself who choose to come together and educate all of the institutions as to who we are. So when we bring kids into, and I'll talk about the Y Roads specifically. When we bring kids into the Y Roads, and when we first started, it was called the place for disconnected young adults. And then we looked at that and said, hold on a second, that's almost a contradiction of what we're really trying to represent. So we said, no, it's a place for opportunity youth, which is the exact opposite, because think about it. If I want help and I walk through your door, I'm not disconnected. I'm actually looking for an opportunity. And so in that building, right on Parsons, right on Jamaica Avenue, we provide job training, GED services, counseling, conflict resolution, because kids go from, and when we talk about that disconnected population, we're talking about that 16 when they stop being cute to 24 when they're searching. That is the most critical population. We're losing that population faster than any population that we're losing in our cities and in our communities. When we're cute, mama and daddy keep you right here. You like a host, you connect to a holster. Then you get like 13 and they say, all right, you can go on out there a little bit. You ever want to see where the parents are, go to a 10 and under basketball game. Stands are packed. Go visit a 15 and under basketball game. You can barely see anybody in the stands other than their friends. That's because we start disconnecting from our children at that point. And that's when they become most vulnerable. On Friday nights, we open up our doors and we tell the first 150 kids can come into our building. We got 300 kids that try to show up at that door. They want to get off the streets. They want to be a part of programs. So there are a lot of programs at YMCA office. Leadership development, after school programs, healthy lifestyles. We have a program right now that's free of charge where young people, middle schoolers can come in, middle schoolers to high schoolers can come in and begin and do health and wellness. 16-week program where you can do health and wellness. Right now we're operating a Junior Knicks program throughout the Jamaica Queens area in various locations. We're at IS 59, we're at PS 48. We're right here. I mean, I'm also fortunate enough, I work with DYCD, and we've got one of the biggest basketball tournaments going on right now throughout the city, the DYCD basketball tournament. Over 241 teams. And I say all that to say that there are a lot of programs that you can tap into. But I think the message has to be bigger. I think the message really has to be on both sides. I sat in a forum with my cousin, they call him Uncle Bobby. He actually travels nationally and speaks about the tragedy of Oscar Grant and so many other young men that are dying around this country. And I listened to the victims of the families talk. And I kept hearing this overwhelming thing, and it compelled me to ask a question. And the question I asked was, before the tragedy, what were you doing? Most folks looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, well, before the tragedy, what were you doing? And most people were just going about their lives. They were going to work, they were doing whatever it is they do. And I said, but you can't wait until something happens before we do something. We've got to be talking to our young people. We've got to be engaging our community organizations and sending messages. Because our kids are talking, we just got to listen. Kids were talking about racial profiling 7 to 10 years before we ever picked it up as adults. We didn't like hip-hop music, but it was saying it. We didn't like what we were hearing because we mainstream ourselves out of it. We disconnect sometime from them. And I think we have to reconnect ourselves back to our young people. And we do that by engaging in some of the activities that they want to do, taking them and exposing them to different things, and making sure that we're continuing the dialogue. Because we start believing that our music, our time, our stuff is the stuff. But guess what? Our stuff was a little bit crazy too. They just got more information. And again, I'm digressing from advertising the why, because Greg said something that was really important in the beginning of his opening. He said, we're in a crisis. So I could easily stand here and talk to you about the YMCA, but what I really want to talk to you about is that on one side, we have got to continue the dialogue. We have got to educate our young people. We've got to change that young man's perspective about authority, period. Period. Because guess what? If he feels that way about police officers, I'm a basketball official. And guess what he sees adults do? Every time you see a basketball game, who they yelling at? The referee. It cross-connects itself to referees, to teachers, to police. So we have got to change our thinking about how we approach it so that they change their thinking about how they approach it. And if we begin that process, then they become more sophisticated. I love the tools that you gave me, because that's where it begins, with real tools. We can be angry, we can be sad, but I think we have a responsibility to impact change. Greg and I are impacted change. Little old man walked up to me in a housing project one day and said, come try out for a basketball team. Little did I know, I would go across a bridge, I would meet 150 other guys. We'd play basketball for a year, then we go work in the Rucker, we'd have jobs, and we played in a game that we loved. And every weekend that I went home, my friends were falling apart. Whether it was the drugs, whether it was the violence, whether it was the joining the back then it was running the numbers and all the other stuff. It was that person that pulled us out of that gave us a whole different life. So there's an accountability on our part too for this. And I think that every day that we create more leaders, like Greg, like Bernard, we can change our community. But it ain't just about those police officers. It's about us. This room should be full right now. Okay? And it's not. So I say that to say that the why is there. I always say, if you go on our website, and I'll give you now I'll do my PSA, YMCANYC.org, YMCANYC.org, and wherever you're at, you can go /Jamaica, /Far Rockaway, and you can get information about our YMCA. Don't let the numbers fool you. I go out, my job is to go out and raise money. So our goal is to not turn any young person away or any family away at our facility. So if you see a number that says membership is $45 a month, but you can only afford $25, walk in that door and say, I can afford $25 a month, and trust me, we'll find a way to make it happen. Summer camp is coming up. I know that many of you are looking for places to put your little ones. We provide financial assistance for that as well. There are no barriers, and there are a lot of free programs and a lot of great opportunities. Questions?
I'm also, hello, my name is Mark here. I'm also a minister of the church here. I work for the YMCA, actually at IS-59. I'm a martial arts instructor. I give my time to the kids because I realize, I first must say to you, you're doing a wonderful program at the YMCA, and now to be a part of the family of the YMCA and see what they're doing in the community. But my question is, how do we go out to reach these kids who don't know what's going on in the community and the resources that are available to them in the community? There's many kids that are, teaching at IS-59, as being a martial arts instructor, I've only guided to one section of kids at a period of time, but there's other kids that want to be involved in it and they're looking for an outlet. Me, as a troubled teen, if I didn't have martial arts, who knows where I would be today? More than likely probably in jail or probably dead somewhere. Because that's a lifestyle I was living. I was living a very rough lifestyle. And like you said, something very crucial, that's 16 to 24. 16 is when you think your butt don't stink. But in actuality your butt does stink because you think you know everything, but you really don't know. And having people out there, and I commend the people who are out here who are trying to reach our kids, because our kids now are lost. They're lost to the music that's going on. They're lost to the violence that's going on. They're lost to the peer pressure. They're lost to so many different things. If we don't have these resources out here to reach these kids, what can we do to conform them back and put them on the right track of where they need to be? Every teen wants to be loved. Every child wants to be loved. Every child wants to be given that type of compassion. But how do we reach out to them if we really don't understand them? If we don't take time, as you said, to listen to them and to hear their complaints. Being a dad of 3 girls is one of the most difficult things because the hormones are ranging. They're getting involved in a lot of different things. So having that outlet for them and just being in their lives and just letting them know, look, here's a shoulder you can cry on when you need to cry. Here's a dad that's not, that's willing to get in a sandbox with a 4-year-old kid and let them know, look, I still love you, as well as being that dad that can say, you know what, you're going on your first date, and guess what? I'm your date. I did it with my daughter. When my daughter was 15, I took her, I dressed up in a nice suit and tie, got dressed, you know, bought her flowers, and taught her, this is the way a young man is supposed to teach, you know, to treat you. Not to walk around with his pants hanging off his behind, you know, and I have to speak about those issues because it does upset me when I see our youth, you know, being, you know, and I want to say, you know, being influenced by society rather than being leaders. You know, we need to teach our kids to be, you know, you're a king, you're a queen. You should be treated that way. You should respect yourself that way. You know, and at the YMCA, I now have the opportunity as an employee to instruct these kids, look, pull up your pants, man, you're better than that. You know, look at the way you're carrying yourself today. You know, I have one of my morals in martial arts is respecting each other. You know, respect is given, but respect is also earned. You know, if you're not respecting the other, then you're disrespecting everybody else. You know, and I enforce that, you know, in my teaching to let kids know, look, you've got to respect the younger people as well as the older people. Don't look down at this person because this person is not as educated as you, but iron sharpens iron. You know, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. You know, that's a scripture that I have in my class, meaning that if you're dull in an area and I'm educated in the area, it's my responsibility to educate you and sharpen the tools that you have so you can now pass the knowledge on to somebody else.
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, to your point, I think we meet young people where they are. I mean, I'm just going to respond to him, and I'll definitely, you know, what I've learned is in doing this, and I spent 11 years at Boys and Girls Clubs, so I was working with young people between the ages of 6 and 18. I think the most important lesson I learned is, and this was when it came down to engaging the most difficult population, is we create the barriers.
Right.
We create the barriers in everything we say and everything we do. And if our first barrier becomes how they're dressed in their time, then we created that first barrier. And so I tend to try to get away from the barriers to get to the person. Because once you can get to the person, then I think you overcome a lot of the things that, you know, if I walk through the door, if any of us walk through the door, and the first thing someone does is wow, I don't like that top on you, or I don't like that bottom on you, or wow, those shoes really don't go with that outfit. You've created barriers. And I think that we want to open our doors and let young people come through the door as is. Because, you know, Dr. Lester Young, supervisor, he's on the Regents Board. He did a workshop with us once, and one of the things he did that I'll never forget is he drew a stick figure on a bulletin board, and he said, This is everybody. This is the average human being right here. We're just all stick figures. We add the stuff that we become. We add the knowledge. We add the clothing. We add the stuff, the interests and the jobs. We add all of that stuff. We all start out as little stick figures. And I think that we have to think about people who come through our doors in that same way, that they come in as blank slates for the most part. And so, yeah, it may not look orthodox to you or me, but that's the best they did to get through your door. After that, then we have to connect with them and then hopefully shape and mold. The kid you see today, the young, and I always say the kid because he's still in here somewhere, is not that kid from the South Bronx in '73, I'll tell you that. All right? And I'm sure none of us are sitting here talking about none of us popped out the oven made.
That's right.
Right? So I meet kids where they are. And I encourage us all to do that because that's how we will break down the barriers to being able to provide more young people with opportunities.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. These are some things I want to expand on what you said. You said you're a minister? Okay. Coincidentally, I've been trying to work with some pastors based on the things that are about to happen in Southeast Queens. And the interesting thing is that initially I got like 5 pastors in a room. I'm down to 2 now. No, and this is real. And the ironic thing is, you know, okay, we come, you know, to those situations with our own perspectives, our own differences. But the irony is that I couldn't even get them to follow up on a conference call. And yet, you know, a lot of pastors, ministers that, you know, within their own congregation, they speak about the youth and this and that. But to speak to what you said, Cedric, if you don't mind me,
absolutely,
Cedric, absolutely, is that it's ironic that the Y would do that, and yet the church is closer to what's going on. They don't reach outside of their walls. They expect everything to come to them. And the very people, and just like you said, this room should be filled, the very people that information that you had that was so, was great, the people that could use it most are not even here.
Right.
So it's bittersweet for me. I'm glad to see the few that are here, but the people that I know, because I'm not far removed from those streets, and I speak to them because we do OSHA training, which I want to speak to you about that. I'd like you to come to our event.
Okay.
And the ironic thing is they look at me and say, okay, I know you're from here, but where are you going with this? Because they see that I can't get a group of pastors to agree on anything. And the kids I see in the street are more together. Unfortunately, they're in gangs and everything, but guess what? It's about 20 or 50 of them standing on the corner, and they'll go meet each other every day on that corner. Try to do that with some pastors. Can you get 50 pastors in a room or reverends in a room together to, combine their resources and say, look, we're going to do this together? No, you're a Baptist. No, you're a Methodist. You're a Presbyterian. And it's ironic to me that these are the same people that are preaching to kids about what they're doing wrong. Now, if you have kids, I don't care which, I have 2 kids, and I can tell them all day long, don't do this, don't do that. But guess what? They're watching what daddies do. That's right. They don't care. It's not about what I'm saying. They're watching what I'm doing. If I say don't curse and then I'm driving and the dude's going too slow, I say, oh, guess what? What I said, it goes right out the window. Daddy, you curse. And I have a girl, and trust me, girls, they don't miss a thing. I might get it past my son. But my daughter, she will tell me stuff back 10 years ago that I remember you said X, Y. What could I say? So, I mean, it has to start with us. I hear them talking about the cops there, and I agree with all that. All that's well and true. But at the end of the day, I think the meetings that need to be had is with these pastors and these ministers. Y'all need to be calling these kind of things for them and try to get them to understand that they are ground zero. And Cuomo has already said, look, I want to focus on the clergy and run programs through the clergy. So it's beneficial to them. It's beneficial to all of you guys. They can't direct funds to you as clergy, but as an organization outside of clergy, they can do that. And Southeast Queens is the next Manhattan, it's the next Williamsburg, and I'm going to end on this note. I just as soon see a McDonald's closed before I saw churches closed. The Catholic Church, they are going through a crisis now because guess what? They're losing members. And, financially, it's affecting them across the board. So when they catch pneumonia, they catch a cold, we get pneumonia. So guess what's going to happen to your congregations? Y'all going to look up, it's 50, it's going to be 40, it's going to be 30. It's an echo chamber. So, those are the people that, need to be in these rooms because it's not going to matter if at the end of the day, the message that needs to be heard, the people are not in the room.
Can I interject? Sorry, the dad and then this gentleman here.
Just from an observer, what I see with a lot of the older guard, I think they're just afraid. They're afraid of these brothers. I'm not afraid because I was them. So, but I see, when you mentioned the 8,000 walking home, my wife would take a different way, frankly. She wouldn't want it. She would think that there could be a problem. I feel like I'm 8,001. It doesn't affect me that way, and I think the large majority are simply afraid of young people. They don't. I don't know why, because we all were once young, but I think the large majority are just afraid that if I bump into him by accident or if something bad is going to happen, and I just assume bump into him, pardon me, excuse me, it's fine, and I'm going and he's going, and that's what I see. I see that people like these people, they're afraid. We could talk here because they're not here. But if we go on, are we going to go on Jamaica Avenue? Are we going to go to 125th? Are we going to go, to the other places? I think a lot of people aren't going to make that trip unless they're in the car.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I mean, I always tell young people when I interact with them, I say, I am you and you are me. It's just a string of time between the two of us. Right. That's all it really is. It's a string of time between the two of us. Both of them, the two folks in the back.
I was just gonna probably like just piggyback on what everyone else was saying. I was seeing how my brother was saying ground zero would be in the church. I feel the real ground zero is at home.
Yes.
That's where your everything is gonna come from. Like, I feel, as you were saying, you gotta be an example to your children. And I feel a lot of times what we've done with this generation coming up is you expected the school to raise your kid, you expected the church to raise your child, you expected everybody to raise your child but yourself. And I feel when we talk about the youth, the issue is not the youth. I don't know any generation to where youth has like always, I mean, every generation has a problem with the youth. The real issue is with those parents, because they're not doing what they need to be doing at home with these children. I mean, I was raised by a very strict father who made it clear, I need you to understand when you leave this house, that's my name that you have. So if you get in trouble, you make me look foolish. Therefore, I gotta make you look foolish. So it's like a certain level of understanding of yourself, but I feel like that understanding of self comes from the home. You have to reassure that at home. Like, you have to put trust in your kids that when they go out in the world, the training that you gave them at home is so strong that they won't get caught up in, X, Y, and Z, because they know better. So I feel the real target for these events should be parents, because parents will help make your job easier. It would help make the pastor's job easier. It would help make Greg's job easier. It would help make everybody's job easier if parents were more involved in their children's lives. You gotta have those uncomfortable conversations. As Mark said, he took his daughter out on a date. You need to do that. For every mother, I recommend you do the same things for your sons. I recommend it. It's important. They need to know how to be treated, what to expect, what not to accept. They should understand these things. So I feel it definitely starts at home.
Let me kind of...
She's been waiting for so patiently.
Home, most definitely. I think part of the issue is what we got coming up. The system wants to tell us that we can't do now. And there's an issue there. Because if our children are allowed to go out and think they can do what they want to do, when they want to do it, however they want to do it, and we're not allowed to discipline, and I'm not talking about abuse, and there's nothing wrong with my self-esteem, and my rule behind God, it's shit. There's something wrong in this, because our children go out, but yet when there's an issue in the street, you're going to say that it's okay for a police officer to beat them, to kill them, to maim them, but yet in the home, they can't be disciplined. There's something wrong with that. Children don't have any rights. You have a right to be obedient. You have a right to do what I say, how I say it, when I say it. That's where your rights begin and end. And again, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about disciplining your children, letting them know, because yes, when you step out of my house, it's not just about you. And if you ask kids, sometimes when they're hanging their pants, and I ask, well, who are you representing? I'm representing myself. No, you're not. You represent all of us at the end of the day. You represent the household you step out of. So parents must step up, not be afraid, and I believe that's where fear comes in, because they think that the system will come. See, you want to make a phone call, let me help you. While you're making the phone call, let me discipline your behind, and then when they come, they can take you. My blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm a single parent. I have 2 sons. All my kids are grown, and I have a daughter. And I've had situations with my oldest son, with the police and stuff. I can't even begin to tell you. However, to the point where now for me, I just said, I, as a parent, and I belong to a church, part of what Brother Prince was talking about, but I just can't sit down anymore and not do something, And we need for these kids to understand that the Jay-Z's and those that have made their money, they need to come back and apologize to our children, because they lied to them. They made them think something was grand and all so well that was not. So It begins at home. Unfortunately, community is not what it used to be, because when I grew up, all kids do their thing. The difference was when we saw an adult, whatever we was getting ready to do, we sucked it up because we didn't know who they knew or who they go back and tell. Or you may have gotten it right then and there, and then they go and tell your parent, and you're going to get it when you get home. So we need that community back. Community is not what it used to be, and I always say if we take one page out of the Jewish handbook, we need to take the know in the community. Know who's in your area. Kids would never have stood on the corner like that. Never. Because it wouldn't have been allowed. We need our men. I'm so glad there are men in here. We need our men to come and confront these boys. They need to know. They need the mentorship, you know, and they need to understand who they are. Because as a woman, I can't show a man how to walk as a man. I can only show him as a woman what a woman would like from a man. So we need that so desperately. And the YMCA, yes, I took advantage of it with my boys growing up and my daughter. So I thank you for the Y and its work. But we need the information to be filtered out. We need parents to stop being afraid to confront their children and talk to their children. We need people not to be afraid to talk to these kids in the street when they see them. Whether it's 1, 2, 3. Sometimes when you just get them one-on-one, what they may have been like in a group, you get them one-on-one, you're going to get a whole different person. So we must learn these avenues in which to communicate and talk to our children and let them know we're for them, we love them, but we need them to be right, we need them to be safe. I have such anxiety now about the police, I can't even begin to tell you. Even when I see them stopping somebody else or I see a siren, you know, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. And we need them to know, yes, how to speak, how to approach, not to antagonize, all this stuff. But they have rights, and they need to know their rights.
I'm just going to close with one last thing. One of the things that we are doing to try to make a difference, because we have learned some things in downtown Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica is a microcosm of what's happening nationwide. And one of the things we started doing, myself and Officer Rick Lowe, was all of the new recruits, and what the missing variable here was that the officers we saw were of our community, from our community, they were of our color. One of the realities is that the people who really need to be here weren't here. It's the white officers that come here. And I'm going to say it openly, and because just like they wouldn't understand our humor and our way, they have to be amongst us to understand us. And so what we do at the Y is, every time a new group of recruits comes into downtown Jamaica, they got to come to my office. And what I do is I sit with them and I try to explain to them what the homeless look like, what our kids look like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when we're having just a bad day, you know, versus engaging in criminal activity, why there's not enough places for our kids to go, because 8,000 kids aren't always looking for some place to go. Sometimes they're just going home.
That's right.
Having that kind of dialogue, and I think we should do that both with from our clergy perspective. I agree with you. I think that you have to have that conversation, and we should be calling them in on a regular to do that. Because if we do that, then they get more comfortable with us. They start to interact. They start to know our names, and also too, it deputizes us. It gives us an authority to walk up to a police officer and say, "Can I help you help this situation?" And I've done that. When I was in Brooklyn, we stopped a number of riots because I'd be walking home. I only worked 4 blocks from where I worked at, and the police officers knew me. And when my kids acted out, I'd be the one to say, "Listen," and you know, the sergeant was always good at saying, "You know what? We don't want to arrest anybody today." And I'd go over to the kids and look, "Take your butt upstairs, okay? Because you got a game tomorrow, and I need you to be playing." And our kids respond to us, but we have to be part of the solution, as well as identifying the problem. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that information. I just want to also thank my brother here for videotaping. This will give us an opportunity to share what was said here today, particularly with our young people. Unfortunately for us, today, one of our young people who was tragically killed, it was mentioned at a McDonald's a few years ago. He's having a street dedicated, renamed in his honor. So our young people are there at the street dedication, but because of the videotaping, we can share this information with them. And thank you for taking this. Our last speaker is Bernard Warren. I think it's important that people know that we do have success that comes out of our communities. Our kids don't see the role models, they don't see the mentors, and they aren't many. But when we do have success stories, it's important that, you know, that they are known, and Bernard has agreed to share with us, you know, his story, because particularly for our young people, it's good for them to hear, you know, that yeah, it wasn't easy, but you know, he made it, and he's going to talk about what he had to do to make it, and you know, the role model that he now is, and his bio is inside your program. Because of the time, I don't want to continue reading more, but I'm going to ask Bernard Warren to come up, and let's give him a round of applause.
I'm glad to be here. Obviously, I know most of you here, and I think that it's ironic. I listened to the speakers, and Cedric, I'm on the board of the Jamaica Y, I should say that. And I've committed myself probably almost the last 10 years of helping raise funds for the YMCA so our youth can be in the programs that Cedric talked about. Leroy Conby went to IS-8 with me. So I tell people I'm a South Sider. I'm South Sider. This is my hood. And so I tell the young people that I talk to, because at the Y program, Y Rose was started out of the Jamaica program, where we dealt with first-time offenders 14 to 18 years old. And we would have programs to talk to them. And I would say, similar to what you said, I am you, you are me. So I'm here really, like we said, the kids are not here, but I'm here really just again to talk about how I'm connected to this community, and I am one with you. I have some of my friends here, and I just want them to stand for a minute, because I'm not here by myself. We came up as a crew. This is my crew, my big brother's over there. We call ourselves Dub. My nickname's Omar. So Donald, Omar, Victor, and then not to be left out, my other man who did all the speaking about the minister's prayer. So I'm here just to show you from 40 years ago, 13, 14 years old, these are guys that were with me that went through all the trials and tribulations, and we're still friends today. And I couldn't stand before you without them. I'm here because of them. We picked each other up. So I was born in Harlem, and we came out to Jamaica, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I came to PS 48, I got picked on. And I had to figure out how to navigate being bullied. People call it bullied now. That then they just call you a punk. And the thing that helped me was basketball. I started playing basketball, and the guys that was involved, the tough guys, they played basketball. I navigated toward that, and that became my outlet. Because at the end of the day, there's crews. There's bad kids, there's good kids, and everybody wants to be cool. And I wanted to be cool. So you get into a situation where each time you're in every level, you're trying to make a choice. So the first choice, I chose basketball. And I chose basketball at an early age. I went to IS-8, which Leroy went to IS-8 with me. So as I'm listening to Cedric and Leroy, there's all these connections here because I grew up in this community. When I went to IS-8, it was all about where you're from. Donald was from 40. Junior was from Baisley. Then they had guys from Liberty. And at that point, it was all about where you were from. So if you wasn't, I was from Linden and Sufton. We didn't really have a classification. But the fact of the matter is, everybody was in their clique. And you had to deal with that. There was fights every day, people were hurt, and each of us had to learn how to navigate that. I say today, it was those skills of navigating that in the hood that helped me in business today. And it's important for young people to understand that. I always say, a person who came up through the hood and got an education has an advantage over the other people in their office or in their business. Because you learn survival skills that you take to work with you every day. And so I'm fortunate to say I come from South Jamaica. And I remember when I'm the youngest of 3 brothers, and I didn't want to go to college. This is not a story where I just came out okay. I was the last of 3 boys, and they said, somebody in this family is graduated from college. You're the youngest, it's going to be you. So I thought I was going to be cute. I went to Queensboro Community just for an associate's degree to say I got a degree. But the fact of the matter is, when I came out of that, what they were paying me, I thought, well, that's just like going to high school. And while I was doing all that, I still was committed to my friends. What I mean by that is, every day when I came home from work, I went and stood on the boulevard. And the thing about that, especially for young people, when you're around negative forces, even if you're not negative, you could get caught up in that. It does not matter. I was in college, but if I'm on the boulevard and there's negative activity going on, when the police come, they're searching everybody.
That's right.
And what happens is, if you have a group of friends and that's your friends, no matter what your parents say, this is my crew. And that's the thing that we must continue to think about, is choices. And everything I'm talking about is choices. Each step along the way, what choice are you going to make? And ultimately for me, I was lucky. And I tell people that I had a professor when I graduated from Queensboro. I went to Brooker College and I played basketball. Again, I keep talking about basketball. That was my saving grace. A professor of mine saw me on the boulevard and said to me, "Aren't you in my class?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what about it?" He said, "No, get in the car. You're going somewhere." I didn't really look at whether I was going somewhere. I was going through the motions, even though I was in college. Here's somebody that saw me and said, "You're going to be something." The fact of the matter is, all those people around you are the people that help shape and mold you. That's why they say it takes a village.
Yes.
And I heard some people say it has to start in the home. I agree 100%. It must start in the home. But the fact of the matter is, there's far too many homes where the situation is not conducive for them to teach them and show them what really should happen. So it comes back on all of us to say, what are we going to do? It's the wives of the world, it's the churches. We all must support our children. Even if a parent is not doing what is right, if we see it, we need to help out. It's an obligation that we have. I'm not going to go long because we're supposed to be over at 1 o'clock. But for me, I'm passionate about this because I feel lucky. I feel fortunate. Many of my friends, these gentlemen here know, many of my friends are dead, in jail. When the crack era hit, it hit home for us.
Yes.
It hit home hard. Many of my friends, got caught up on drugs, either died or died because they was in the crack wars. And that's when I really began to understand a true sense of community. And I'm saying my friends are dying. And so as I tried to achieve success, and I'll talk about that in 1 minute, I start to understand, become community, but I became conscious. I don't think I was truly conscious until the crack era hit. Because at that point, I really realized what was happening to our community. But I want to get back to business and success. So while I was in Brooker College, and my brother's here, and I'll tell a funny story that he may not even remember. He had a friend that used to give parties. And his friend came to me and said, "If you sell 10 tickets to the party, I'll let you in for free." And my position was, I don't want to pay, so I'm going to sell 10 tickets. Well, I sold 20 tickets, and I got me and my shorty in with me, my girlfriend at the time. So I thought I was a big man. I go to the party, I didn't pay. The next party, he comes to me again. This time I sold 50 tickets. Well, what am I really saying? I learned how to hustle. People say negative connotation, hustling. Well, the fact of the matter, I was learning business and I didn't realize it. The next time I sold 100 tickets. So now I'm feeling myself. But the group was smart. They said, "Wait a minute. We want you to join the group. You can't keep getting all these free people in the party." So I joined the group. This group used to give parties on the west side in Manhattan. We can get 800 people in the rooms, big warehouses. Now it's all fancy co-ops and condos over there. But the point is, that's when I start to understand business. Understanding what it is to go out and make money for myself. and it stirs something in me. And so I left college. I wanted to work for Federal Express. Had a manager's job, feeling good about myself. But I still had that urge, that thing that said, I want to be independent. And while that was going on, ultimately, I started getting nice little bank accounts. After each party, the group would split up the money. I put my money in my bank account, and I go look at it every week, because I'm a poor kid from Jamaica. Now, when I say a poor kid from Jamaica, let me give it to you even deeper. My mother cleaned floors for a living. My father didn't have a high school education. He washed dishes. So when I say poor kid, that's real to me. So that's why I used to go look at my bank account every week. I got money. I think we as people and young people, we get stifled. We get afraid. Do not be afraid. If you have a dream, go for it. Go for it. I always say, I jumped out the window to my destiny. But it was a belief. It was a plan. So I bought the first building. Then we wound up getting 3 or 4 other buildings. I fell in love with the business of real estate. And what I learned was, this is where my heart is. It wasn't an overall plan, but the fact of the matter is, that's something that I now know I want to do with my life. And I always tell a joke to people that by then I was married to my wife, Paula, whom I think most of you know, that's my wife over there, Paula. And I said, I want to leave Federal Express and I want to go work in Harlem and do real estate. And she said, you mean you leaving your real job? So we had to make an agreement. The agreement was that I got to make a success of myself in real estate. And at this time, I wrote a letter to a company in Harlem, and they told me, come on, you could come here, but let's be clear, you got to start from the bottom. So I left, quote unquote, corporate America, went to a company called Webb and Brooker, and they made me a site manager just to manage a project. And I said to my wife, my goal is to make partner in 5 years. That was my goal, make partner in the company in 5 years. And I worked like a dog. In fact, and again, this goes to young, old. So I started working like a dog. The managers that worked alongside of me said, what's wrong with you? Because people who are mediocre, what they want to do is make you step back and be at their level.
That's right.
So I'm hustling, and they said, you a fool. Look at you. You suck it up to the boss. I said, no, I'm not sucking up to the boss. I'm doing work. And the point I want to say, and this is just so important, is that you have to be your own leader. Now, we talk about the police, all those things are correct, but I believe in my heart of hearts, there are no excuses. Because at the end of the day, if you allow an excuse to creep in, then your dream is dead. So I believe, and all my friends know, I work hard, and I believe in that because I think that that's what gets me over that hurdle. We are competing against the tide. It is not equal. It's not fair. And I don't care. We should not care. We should fight for what's right. We should push for what's right. But at the end of the day, even beyond that, I still got to fight. I got to continue. So my boss, I would go in every Thursday, meet with him and take care of my stuff. And then I asked him, what does he do? And I helped him with his work. So what does that mean? When he decided to say he's retiring, and they said, we need a new director of operations, I raised my hand. I know the job. And the bosses said, well, don't we need somebody else? The guy was retired said, no, give him the job. The fact of the matter is, I'm here because of a strong community and hard work. And there's nothing, there is no excuse, there's no fast track, it's hard work. You heard some of Cedric Dew's bio. If you listen to it, he's been in the boys club, he's done this and that. It's steps, it's like climbing a ladder. And ultimately, the media society portrays it as a quick thing. The reason I'm here today is talking, for years I was reluctant to come forward because in our society, when you come forward and people say, oh, you're successful, what happens, people want to push you down. But like Cedric said, there's no more time for that. We're in crisis. Everybody got to step up, man up, woman up, because our community needs us. So that's the only reason I'm out here, out front. I used to joke and say, I like to be behind the scenes. So if everybody that knows me see me coming out front, it's because of that crisis. I understand where we are. So that's why I take the choice to be here. So to make a long story short, I went to the company, and today In 2015, I am the sole owner of the company, a Webb Real Estate Company. I try to keep it succinct, like I said. I know Greg said I had time, but we've been here for a long time. And so I entertain any questions you may have. And if none, like I said, I know most of you know me already. And my real thing, according to Greg and what he has said, is to talk about tools for success. And really, that would have been focused for young people. But again, some of you know me a little better now that I've given this presentation. So
can you just share with some of your people some of the challenges you faced,
okay.
You know, and
Greg? Well, I mean, I'll talk about personally, again, you know, I didn't get into too much, but there was times, for example, and I'll just this little joke I should tell young people is, I remember when I didn't have enough confidence to say no to a crew. So, for example, when I was coming up probably in high school, some of my boys said, we're going to rob the liquor store. And I didn't have enough confidence to say no at the time. So I said, yes. What time are we going to rob the liquor store? So they said, we're going to be there 7 o'clock. So I said, bet, 7 o'clock, I'm there. So I didn't show up. Right? Now you said, well, wait a minute. What did you do? The next day I came. What happened? I was there 8 o'clock. Where were y'all? And they said, man, I said, man, but I didn't have enough confidence. And so you got to use different tools to figure it out. You know, that's on the business side. Most of the folks I deal with don't look like us. And I have to be able to figure out what skill set. I told you that it is the hood that taught me survival skills. And one of the things I learned is to be able to have a carrot. What do I mean? If I'm trying to do one thing with you, and the only way I know you're going to be fair and try to work with me correctly is be able to tell you behind that there's 3 or 4 more things that we could do together. Again, these are strategies, survival tactics. The other thing is, and again, me and Greg had a lot of talk, is if you're in business in our community, you have to know all your politicians. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to do a project in your community, you want your local elected officials to say, hey, I know this guy, he's of the community, we support him. So it's never about just what you're doing. I don't believe it's never about what you're doing, whether it's school, whether it's on your job. Everything's interrelated. What you're trying to do, who you're connected to, what your goals are, they all flow together.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. Are we blessed by our speakers today? Thank each and every one of you for coming out today and just enlightening us and sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and I think we're all better by it, and thank you very much. I'm going to ask our Director of Christian Education, Reverend Dr. LaVonne Erskine, to come up and just give us some closing remarks.
They did an excellent job from the police force talking about what he feels that we should be doing, as well as the different information that she gave regarding different things we can do, numbers we can call to get certain help. And of course, Cedric talking about the Y and all the different services that they offer. I think it was a well-rounded panel that we had today, and then to bring closure to all of that. Even though we go through all of those issues and circumstances, the success story that came from Brother Warren, I think that there is some good things going on in our community, along with some of the things that are not so good. But as we come together as church, community, and family, I believe each one of us have the opportunity to touch the lives of each other, our families, our children, our youth. And I think we can start from here today by walking out with the thought in our mind that it is a good thing to be able to reach out and touch one another. Because the only way we can have unity within our community, we have to start by making that commitment to one another, to God, to our family, our friends, and our community. We need to start today, not ending here, but continuing this type of a dialogue. Continuing to have dialogues like this. Yes, the room should be full, But we thank God for the ones that are here, that are able to get this information and take it out to one another. I pray that what you have received today, you are able to share with others, share with your friends, and then the next forum that Brother Greg will be putting on, I'm sure there should be another one. We hope to have more people here. Thank you so much for coming. Thank God for your time and your precious attention that you paid to this group, the panel that was here with us today. Let's, Father, in the name of Jesus, we come humbly into your presence to give praises, honor, and glory. We come thanking you for this privilege of opportunity to be in your presence, God, to talk and dialogue about the issues and the situations in our community. Father, I know, God, that there will be a change that will be coming. And we pray, God, that you will continue to undergird us. Help us to undergird one another. Help us to be leaders. Help us to stand out and speak out and to walk in a way that you have purpose for us to walk. And to let us know that there is sometimes pain in purpose, but yet our purpose can be on point. And we thank you for each one under the sound of my voice. We thank you for your hands of mercy. We give you glory and honor and praise for all things, God. We say thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Let the children of God say amen.
Amen.